Yeah, what up, y'all? It's your boy J7, and on this episode of On the Spot, we got a really special guest, man. We got somebody that's 20 plus years in the game, somebody that was known as a Montreal freestyle phenom back in the days, to signing with Guru, Gangstarr Foundation, to video games, to projects throughout, all the way till his latest single, In My Shoes, that's out right now. We talking about the one and only Bless in the building. What up, bro?
What's good? What's good? Great to be here. Thank you for having me, Jay.
Yes, sir.
We've known each other many years, and it's only right we catch up.
100%.
This is kind of the first, one of the first interviews I'm doing to kick off the new project, and to let everybody know, like you said, we got a new single, In My Shoes. So yeah. I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Definitely, man. Appreciate you coming here, man. How does it feel to still be dropping music after so many years, man?
It feels great, man. I mean, you know better than anybody. We're diehard, lifelong hip-hop heads. And, you know, for me, it's like I'm still passionate about making music. I never stopped making music. I've been producing and writing with my partner, shout out Mano Sound Machine, for years. Yeah. So for me, it was just, you know, only a matter of time till I come out with new music. You know, really this isn't a job. It's a lifelong commitment, and you know, it's a career. So yeah, I'm super happy to still be, you know, doing what I love, man.
No doubt. That's true artist talk right there, man. And the new video, In My Shoes, really dope record. Like you said, Mano produced it. Yeah. But I noticed that DJ Chemo was it DJ Chemo from the Rascals that did the video?
Shout out my big brother DJ Chemo. So me and Chemo and the whole, you know, Rascals crew, you know, shout out Red One.
Big shout out my dog Red One. Yeah, definitely.
Great guy. I've known them probably about as long as I've known you.
Wow.
So you know, the Rascals was, you know, one of the first, you know, groups to really like embrace me. You know, nice. I don't know when we first met, whether it was on tour, maybe Junos or something like that, but I met them way back in the early 2000s when I was a teenager.
Sick.
And you know, me and Chemo, you know, we've been homies for a long time, and I was coming out to Vancouver a little while back, and he was like, yo, let me send you some, you know, visuals and show you what I've been doing outside of music. And I was definitely impressed, you know, and we had a blast shooting the video. We shot it like all around Vancouver.
Wow.
And, you know, crazy story. He was like, all right, so, you know, let's go scout some locations. And I was like, yo, let's shoot on East Hastings. And for people who aren't familiar with what East Hastings is, it's like the biggest skid row.
Yeah, it's that street. Okay, yeah, that street everybody
outside
talks
of LA. That's like the worst.
They say people are like zombies out there.
And tens of thousands, you
wow.
know? Yeah. It's something like from like a movie in the 70s in New York,
Crazy.
You know, you know.
No, you hear about it. I've been hearing about that for years, about that street, that strip or whatever.
Yeah, so I was like, yo, you know how we like to do, like, let's go to the, you know, to the worst part and mix it up with the locals. And, you know, we went out there and we shot, and, you know, shout out to my homies for, you know, holding us down and kind of like making sure Chemo was like filming in reverse and wasn't tripping over needles.
That's crazy.
And no like buddy like popped out and, you know, started screaming and ruined the shot, but it went super smooth, and, you know, nice. They were really cool, and we got some great shots. So, you know, I'm really excited for everybody to see the video. It really came out dope. So salute DJ Chemo.
Yeah, man.
You know, a legend himself.
100%, man. Big up the whole Van City, man, and everything they've been doing out there, from Chemo with the Rascals and also producing for a lot of people and stuff.
Yeah,
you know
Chemo's always been ahead of his time, and you know, no different with the videos. So
no doubt, man. I think you have a listening party or like an online thing going on.
Yeah.
What's going on? Tell us about that.
I'm actually doing my first live stream concert. It's gonna be like a listening session, kind of versus kind of vibe, and I'm gonna actually perform all the new joints that I've been working on in studio.
Nice.
You know, with, you know, high quality audio and everything. And, you know, everybody can check it out July 14th. Tickets are $10. And there's also a little option there. There's 5 passes for like a meet and greet. They can get on Zoom with me.
Oh, that's dope.
So, you know, anybody who's curious what we're up to or what the new project is sounding like, they could kind of get an advanced screening.
Shit, that's pretty cool.
And I'm going to perform it at the same time. Shout out to the site is called Ursa Live. So it's going to be streamed on ursalive.com. Great company based in LA, and definitely salute to them. So
you still have those US connections, collabs going on. I mean, I know you're doing it with the music, but also on the business side.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have old relationships, with people that I met, years back. And, fortunately, I was always a fan of, keeping up with good people.
Yeah.
And, there's still a handful of lifers in the music business like us who are still really passionate about what they do. And I love to work with people like that. And I'm always down to collab. So when I was introduced to the people from Ursa Live, they kind of told me what their concept was. And, I'm very excited to do it.
That's fresh, man. And are you still dropping music under Platinumberg? Is it still under the same imprint, or you're like releasing it independently, differently?
Well, Platinumberg is still there. This single's coming out on 1154 Records. Through Believe Music.
Big shout out to Gilles, Rabat, the whole gang.
Of course. So salute my whole team. So we're working with them, and shout out my manager Lenny Levine also.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're moving around. You're still active and working with the movers and shakers out here.
Of course. So it's still Platinumberg, but it's distributed through 1154 and Believe right now.
And is the project Loose Diamonds? Is that what the name is?
No, that was kind of like a mixtape. Loose Diamonds was like different joints, joints, little gems. This one is called All Roads Lead to Chaos. So it's named after the first single.
Yeah, you dropped that song.
Right. So it's going to be like a 7-song EP, maybe 8 with a bonus song. So we got a couple features that we're going to announce in the near future that we're excited about.
We can get a couple exclusives out here.
I mean, until it's done, I don't have, when it's done, it's done. But we're working on something.
The vocals aren't in yet?
A la DJ Khaled, the vocals are not in yet.
Okay, so I feel you.
But it's going to be something really exciting, and it's definitely going to be something in the vein of the vibe that I'm kind of bringing with the All Roads Lead to Chaos, with the In My Shoes.
Yeah.
It's that, Marseille, south of France, mob samples, very dramatic, choppy break beats, dark.
Okay.
And of course, my pedigree, lyrical.
Bars.
Lyrical as fuck.
Bars on bars.
Lyrical
always,
as fuck.
So you seem to be someone who's always, like, we're talking about all the connections outside of Montreal, outside of Canada even. But you've still probably seen the Montreal scene evolve to what it is today.
Of course.
How do you feel about that, like the game in 2021?
Look, man, when I came into this game as a teenager, 13, 14 years old, and I was just meeting people every day. You remember what it was like back when, high school days, and the scene was kind of like underdeveloped. It was almost like Detroit.
Yeah.
When it came to, we never really had anybody pop at that time, outside of whatever was happening locally. We had Shades of Culture and Dubmatic and salute to the OGs. They did a great job and made really creative records, but we didn't have like a M, like when Detroit got M, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So it was a lot of like 8 Mile, I joke about that all the time, but that's really what it was. A lot of dingy little spots, open mic nights, battles, and that's how, kind of...
That's how I heard about you for the first time. So I remember people telling me, I think at Sona or Area or where...
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
Kid, Bless, man. I would hear Bless and Justice. I don't know if you guys were there around the same time.
Justice was a homie of mine.
Big shout out to him.
Shout out Justice.
I remember hearing those names from back then.
I was one of these kids, North Face backpack. My homie Yushua had the skateboard, you know what I'm saying? Salute my brother Yushi.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? We went to high school.
We
went
to man, shout out to him.
That was one of my best friends, you know what I mean? Back then and shit. So we were like, if you ever saw the movie Kids, remember that movie? That was, like drinking 40s, getting into fights.
Yeah, the classic times.
I didn't have skateboards, but my homie did. And, we were just North Face backpack going from the battle to the open mic night, to waiting for Sona to open. And then,
that's crazy.
Getting into ciphers and shit, outside of Sona, inside of Sona, and then taking the first metro home.
Crazy.
And I'd been out from, the morning going to school in high school, stay out till 7 the next morning, so it was a lot of fun.
That was that Montreal hip hop life back then.
Right. So, I kind of really came from nothing, came out of nowhere, being in a French speaking province. Not to say that was a disadvantage because, I had homies like A-Track and I had homies like, Dave One and Pete Doug from Chrome, who were already, like myself trying to make moves outside, and, all that to say, we kind of had to go to these places and be part of this scene in order to meet each other, right? That's how we networked.
Yeah.
So you kind of had to be who you claim to be in your rhymes, at least
Back
a
then.
little bit,
Absolutely.
because you're going to see people tomorrow. Yeah. You know what I'm
real.
saying? And you better be making friends, not enemies, or else, you know, you're going to get it. So
It was different, yeah.
Yeah, so I never looked at it as a disadvantage, but definitely, you know, it was an uphill battle, you know, sitting with labels like Def Jam and they, you know, listen to me
Exactly.
spit and they're like, damn, we didn't know they had, you know, hoods in Canada. Like
Yeah.
we didn't know anybody could rap like that out there, you know? So, you know, there was a lot of groundwork that needed to be done to open people's eyes so they would, you know, come up here and say, holy fuck, you guys do have a vibrant scene. You guys have crazy after hours. You know, of course there's fucking hoods out here and there's grimy, you know what I mean? Grimy cliques.
Yeah,
and,
there's everything
You know,
out here in the
so
city.
many rappers came out here thinking shit was sweet and got their ass handed to them.
Facts.
You know what I mean? It got chased back to the hotel and got, you know what I mean, robbed and everything. So, you know, I think it was just a lack of communication once upon a time, pre-social media, of course. So, you know,
And looking at it today in 2021, like the Montreal scene, because I know you still follow what's going on.
Of course. And, you know, I always support talent, regardless of where it's from, whether it's from New York or LA or from my own backyard. Talent is talent and good music is undeniable. And, you know, for me, I always just saw it like, yo, I judge people on the merit of their talent. And there was a lot of people in this business that didn't do the same for me. But if certain people, you know, didn't do what they did, which was basically hear me out and judge me based on my talent,
Yeah.
I would have never had a career. So I owe that to younger artists and to younger producers and, you know, to give
100%.
people a chance and judge them based on how good their shit is. And that's all I give a fuck about.
That's paying it forward, man. And as an OG, because you're active and everything, but you're still an OG in the city, it's cool to hear that because like the youngins gotta know. And even like, you know, we live in a generation today where the youngins that are rapping today, the guys that are active might not even know about what was going on back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Not
of course.
everybody are students of the game like that.
Of course.
But it's important to let the people know about your journey and also let them know that you're there and you're there to listen to and pay attention to what's going on out
It's
here.
time to refresh their memory. And
Exactly.
also at the same time, you know, like I feel like it is important for me. The most important thing is to push the culture forward.
Exactly.
You know, I want to make great music. I want to make quality that's going to stand the test of time. That's very important to me. And that's why I'm always down to collaborate with people who are fucking moving and who are fucking
Oh, yeah.
creating
we
great
gon-
content, you know, content period.
We're
Whether
going to get
you're-
into all that, Bless.
whether you're an amazing, video director, whether you're doing your podcasting,
Yeah.
whether you're a local brand, whether you're a young spitter, a beat maker, this is what it's about. It's about collaboration. So to answer your question, I'm actually really happy that I see more and more collaboration in the city. Because once upon a time, you know, this is a conversation that probably happens on every fucking podcast, but it's true. The English and French were divided. Those scenes were divided.
100%.
And I love seeing the French cats getting the streaming numbers that they're doing and getting endorsements and all that. And I love to see the English cats have the balls to go outside of their comfort zone, outside of our city,
Yeah.
and see how they measure up. Right?
Very
Because
important. That's
steel
something-
sharpens steel, as they say, right? So
Exactly.
if you're just around your boys and they tell you it's great because they're your people, you can never, get to that professional level.
Those are big bars that you're dropping because not only that, when you're around a market that is mostly French, it's very easy as an English rapper to be like, you don't have necessarily to be the best guy sometimes,
Yeah.
but you just come in English and it kind of looks good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas when you go and you got to go outside your comfort zone and go to places where they only speak English and really display your skills. And it's really important for people to kind of get their weight up in the game.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about all the history. So let's go through it, right? I heard it started with b-boying at 12 years old, like being a break dancer or whatever back in the days. Like, where did the Bless hip hop story kind of start out here in the city?
Man, I discovered my passion for hip hop probably like really young, 8, 9 years old, just watching, Rhapsody, you know what I mean? Just seeing that early Eric B and Rakim, that Big Daddy Kane Ain't No Half Stepping, that Don't Sweat the Technique, Eric B and Rakim, that Public Enemy, that fucking...
And was that you solo, or like did you have big brothers or something that were like putting you on, or
pretty much like for sure I had some cousins and OGs and shit that were putting me on to stuff, but for the most part it was really me just kind of discovering this fresh movement, this culture that was exploding at the time. And I fell in love with the grimiest shit. I remember watching Juice for the first time at Cotonej Plaza with my sister. God rest her soul. She passed away. R.I.P. my sister. One of the first movies she took me to see when I was a kid was like Juice.
That's crazy.
And we snuck in Cotonej Plaza and shit. We didn't pay for the tickets. And we watched it, and I just saw that Know the Ledge, you know what I'm saying? That fucking, and I was like, wow, like,
that bass line,
this is the, and just seeing, the DJ battles, and for me, I was like, fuck, like, this is what I want to do with my life, and so I caught the bug, b-boying originally, being a b-boy breakdancing or whatever. And I kind of, studied under, some serious OGs in the city, Flow Rock was the clique that I was, that I was with. So shout out Dazzle, Walkin' MTL Breakers, you know what I'm saying?
MTL Breakers, I still see him active,
you know what I mean? So those are my OGs. You know what I mean?
Big shout out to them, man.
And and these were the guys that were like, yo, this is Nas live at the barbecue, this is,
that's dope.
Never put me in your box if the shit, it's tapes, like, you know what I mean? Like, the movement was new. It was exciting. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
So at the end of the day, that's how I kind of first got introduced to the actual scene. So going to battles as a b-boy, going to talent shows.
So you were still performing and stuff at a young age.
Yeah, at La Voix High School, at Shad Academy. This is early 90s shit, and I'm a baby. You know what I'm saying?
You're like, how old are you at this point?
I was 7 years old, 8 years old.
You were doing like shows at that age?
Yeah, as a b-boy. So I started meeting, the Gary T's, the Ricky D's, the Shaheeds.
At that age?
Yeah, and Gary T was actually one of the first people to ever manage me at that age, because I'd be backstage and I would spit for the older guys that were there to rap. So that was groups like Death Threat, shout out to Zip, Ziplocks from Butter Babies. That's how I met him. Shades of Culture, you know what I'm saying? As a kid, as a baby, literally, not a teenager.
How does 7-year-old, 8-year-old Bless get to these events and get backstage? You've always been that guy, man. Like, you're always...
sometimes my sister would take me if my mom's was too lazy to take me or whatever, but
but like your
we
parents
were there at supportive, yes, but maybe not happy about it in the beginning. They just they're like, hey, it's a phase. And then all these years later, it didn't look like I grew out of the phase, right? So I caught the bug early for loving to what was that sample? Feeling Satisfaction from the Street Crowd Reaction. That's, I think, Guru on Dwick.
Wow.
Right? So Feeling Satisfaction from the Street Crowd Reaction. So the first time I performed at like a talent show, and back then, hip hop was not at all mainstream, especially not here. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to get your dose of hip hop, you'd go to these talent shows in the hood, and anybody who was like, and you'd have like stand-up comedians, you'd have reggae singers, you'd have rappers,
the whole urban community,
right? Breakdancers, the kids and the adults.
So that's how Ricky D and
so Gary T kind of discovered me very young, and I was backstage like with the older cats and ciphering, and they were like, yo, like, but he can rap though, like, you know what I'm saying? So like, I already had my eye on being like, yeah, I ain't gonna be nobody's backup dancer. I want to be an artist later,
Dope.
So couple years of doing that, getting my confidence up, and one of the first big shows I ever did, I guess, we got a great reaction from the crowd, and that instantly made me fall in love. Like, this is the most addictive feeling in the world, when it connects with your audience.
100%.
Wow. Right, to command a stage for real, and that's
the crowd, man.
That right. So years go on, and I see like a KRS-One, rock the crowd. You know what I mean? And one of my favorite early, you know, hip hop memories was actually, and I told Chemo this the other day. They were here opening for KRS-One when KRS-One had Step Into
Rascals.
a World. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went to, I think Vibes had just opened and Chemo was playing. They were doing a little in-store.
Yeah.
And I rapped for their manager from BMG, Saul Guy. And he was like, yo, take my number, whatever. That's
Big
the
player in the game, this guy,
This
right?
is like 96.
Wow.
Right? So I spit for them and they invited me to the show. They put me on the list or whatever.
Okay.
And then New York City Breakers were there because they were part of that, you know, video Step Into a World and all that. And then at the end of the show, shout out to anybody who might have been there, because I know a lot of my OGs were definitely there that night. They actually pulled me on stage with KRS-One and New York City Breakers, and I got to break dance. So now I had the bug like big fucking time. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, but 96, you're still dancing. You're not fully
I'm b-boying and shit, but like you know, I'm trying to rap.
Okay.
At this point, you know, I probably am in like you know grade 7 or something. You know what I'm saying? Like 13, maybe 12. And so, you know, there was these little moments that, you know, would keep solidifying me to, you know, be like, you know what, maybe I can do this, you know. And for a long time, I wasn't sure if it was, you know, even fucking possible because it was uncharted territory.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And another moment was when I met Pac, that famous picture.
Okay. This is what I need to get into, man, because... and I think you have like a very long history with New York City.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's where you met Pac, but like...
It is. Yeah.
Okay, that picture is a legendary picture. I remember back in the days you had a mixtape with Clinton Sparks, and I think there was... I don't know if Pac was on it or...
Yes, there was.
So you have like Pac vocals and stuff like...
They weren't my vocals, I wish they were, but yeah, I had done a track that kind of was, from what I understood at the time, it was one of the last joints that he recorded in Vegas, right?
Wow.
And there was some cat out of Philly that had reached out to somebody I knew in Toronto and had, you know, gotten these vocals.
Some kind of connection. Okay, that's for the mixtape.
And they were like, yo, we want maybe a Canadian cat to help get some CanCon love. And they threw me on that verse.
Okay.
So
but
that was unreleased.
That's not related with the picture.
That was completely unrelated, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So the joint was called First to Bomb, and it's original Pac hook and Pac verse on it, and I put a verse on it for my mixtape.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
bro.
it was like a little Canadian version of it.
Very dope, man.
That was crazy. But the
Tell us
Pac
about
story
that
is
picture.
separate.
Yeah, we need to know about that picture.
So
man.
I was, I think, about 11 years old, and I actually just went to New York for like a wedding, like somebody who my grandparents had helped out in the war, you know, ended up being semi-successful. Daughter was getting married and sent, you know, an invite to my grandparents. So, you know, my pops was like, you know, I know how much you love this, you know, hip hop stuff, and come to New York for the weekend and we could, I don't know, like I wanted to go to Harlem and buy Onyx t-shirts and mixtapes and, you know, whatever I could get.
The New York experience.
So I wanted to soak that shit up.
Yeah.
So, you know, we drove down with my grandparents and they put us at a famous hotel called the Marriott Marquis, which is actually the right corner of Times Square.
Okay.
That one of those jumbotrons is the Marriott Marquis still to this day. So unbeknownst to me, Pac was staying at the hotel, but I had no idea. So I just went to go have a late night bite to eat with my pops.
What year is this about?
This is when he's shooting Above the Rim. So let's say 93, 94. And it's Pac, you know, red bandana to the front, like iconic Pac. And I believe he was in New York a lot shooting the movie at the time. So, you know, I'm just kind of like crossing the street, coming from having a bite to eat late night, going back to the hotel. And I see like a commotion. And me being the, you know, rambunctious kind of kid I was like running towards it. And I was like, who's that? And I seen it was, and then like I look up and I see Pac with the red bandana. So I'm like, oh,
crazy.
I gotta try and meet this guy. You know what I'm saying? This is like one of my idols. And mind you, you know, Pac wasn't who he is now yet. Like it was
but he was
Pac.
still a, you know, big rapper.
Superstar. But you know, meeting Pac then was meeting like Jay or Nas. It was a big deal, but it wasn't like fucking Bob Marley, fucking Elvis. Like, you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Like, you know, so I met so, I was really young. There was a lot of people around him, so they kind of let me through because I was a little kid or whatever. And I just went straight up and balls out. I was like, yo, you're an inspiration. I want to do what you do one day. I rhyme and I love your shit. And, he at 11, I probably looked like 7, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, he kneeled down to, eye level.
Wow.
And he was like, yo, rap for me, you know what I'm saying? So I spit a little something for him and he was like, yo.
Yo, that's legendary, bro.
Yeah,
okay.
man. Yeah, man. And so he was like, yo, what do you call yourself? And I'm like, back then I was small. I was a kid. I called myself Shorty. Okay. So, but they started calling chicks Shorties, right?
Yeah.
Shorty, I'm there, right? So I was like thinking I need another name. And he was like, yo, you blessed, bro. You little blessed or something. They call you, blessed. You call yourself blessed. It was like a joke, right? So he kind of like kicked it with me and my pops for like 15, 20 minutes. And he was the fucking coolest down-to-earth celebrity that I met, like, to this day. Like, being who he was, he didn't need to spend all that time with a little kid and encourage me the way that he did. But Pac was really a man of the people, you know what I mean? And when we see his legend get twisted and, told, because of the death row shit and because of the East-West Coast beef, it's fucked up to see, because this guy was a poet first and foremost.
100%.
This guy was an artist first and foremost. This guy was a man of the people. This guy was a humble, good soul. And yes, gangster rap being what it was at the time.
Yeah, it was that era.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, for sure he was, pumped up with, Suge and all that. But who he was as a person, I don't believe really was that. At least not from my brief experience meeting
That's
him.
crazy. Okay, so Pops kicked it with Tupac and everything.
So Pac was telling me and my pops, but mostly my pops, like, yo, don't discourage him. He's gonna make you a lot of money one day.
Really?
And my pops was like, yeah, I don't really know if I want him like at 11 years old in all this, But I mean, it was a great experience. And as Pac became what he was, and as I started to try and become somebody in this business, it was these kind of moments that always told me, maybe I'm not delusional. Maybe I can maybe this is happening for a reason.
So is that where the name really originated from? Like,
that's where it was inspired from. Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
So I also know that you've had your demo played for a lot of big, like in those years probably, or while you were coming up. Like I heard a Dame Dash story, I heard a L.A. Reid story.
There's an L.A. Reid story.
Those are like giant names in the industry.
There's a Jam Master Jay story.
Wow.
Salute his son TJ Mizell.
Yeah. He's DJing now, right?
He was DJing for ASAP Ferg and shit.
Oh yeah, facts.
And I met him when they were out here on tour a couple summers ago, and got to kick it with him. Told him some stories about me and his pops at Chungking Studios, and his pops giving me the fucking beat CD.
All right, hold on. Let's be real here. Let's drop some facts for the city, for everybody watching. We're talking about Jam Master Jay of Run DMC. We're talking about Jam Master Jay who put out Onyx, who put out 50 Cent originally. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those are like legendary stories, and we don't hear these stories from many, if not any, MCs from Montreal.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Like, give me one of those demo stories, or because I know you have a lot, but like,
man, I got a couple, and I'll try and keep them brief.
Yeah, give me just a couple quick ones.
So the Jam Master Jay story off the top, it's my, I'm in high school and I'm spending my summers going, kind of back and forth to New York to try and get a deal. So my manager at the time, shout out my brother Kijana, I'm living with him in South Jamaica, Queens.
Okay, so you had an American manager, like taking care of.
And I'm living with him, kind of like sleeping on, on his couch in the basement, shit. You know what I mean? Nothing glamorous. And taking the Greyhound bus for $50 overnight to New York, sleeping like shit.
Well, that's what a lot of rappers out here should be doing, man.
Take it old school, go organic. Like we were like literally, camping out in front of labels, waiting for the fucking A&R, the president, to come out so we can be like, yo, we need to talk to you.
That was the way.
My little guy, spit for him. You know what I'm saying? So, if you didn't have balls or you were somebody who was worried about rejection, this was not the game for you.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of stories that come to mind, but one was with Jam Master Jay. I got the opportunity to go to Chungking Studios and spit for him. He liked my project. And, you know, he gave me some joints. You know, unfortunately, he ended up passing away. Another was, you know, sitting down with L.A. Reid. I was 5 minutes late. I don't think he liked that. That was a big regret. About 16 years old, brother.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
But still, to be 16 years old, sitting in an office with L.A. Reid.
And rapping for him personally, like at his desk. You know,
that shit is crazy.
I was at Atlantic Records. This was a story. I was just in like a clubhouse room a couple of weeks back, and somebody from Atlantic was telling the story with me that, you know, I went to Atlantic. It was like 10 in the morning. I was like groggy, drank a Red Bull to get my energy up, and they're like, okay, you know, spit for us, like in the office, like super, you know, like white executives, like sitting at a boardroom.
That's kind of like the Bobby Shmurda video, like we see.
Well,
him
that's
rapping.
Actually, I believe Atlantic.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not sure. It could be Sony.
I know there's, but
that was totally the vibe. And I jumped on the motherfucking
on the
table.
Okay.
We were doing that way before, you know, salute Bobby Shmurda, but, you know, this is what needed to be done, you know?
Yeah,
and it was my manager who came from the era of Run DMC and LL and worked with all these guys. And he was like, yo, you need to come in there like a young LL, like jump on the... so man. He was like, yo, when I do this, jump on the table. And I'm like, are you fucking crazy? I'm like, what if I slip on the chair? Like, it's gonna look crazy weird, right? And he's like, bro, you get one shot to make a first impression. What the fuck do you have to lose? Who are you?
Facts.
You're the cocky kid from Canada. That's what they called me. Jump on the fucking table and get your deal, or don't. Up to you. You know what I'm saying? School of Hard Knocks.
For real.
So jumped on the table at Atlantic, battled in front of Method Man and Redman's release party for the Rockwilder.
Shit.
I was working at a studio which was next door to where I was staying, and he was good friends with my manager. Salute my brother Don Newkirk. For those who want a little quick history lesson, Don Newkirk was down with Third Base.
Okay.
Right? And part of this whole mix in the early Def Jam game, because, you know, like in the early Def Jam days, I should say, not the Def Jam game, confuse some people, but, you know, they were all Queens guys. So that's where I was staying.
Okay.
So Rockwilder, Prince Paul, a lot of De La, all these guys used to come rent his home studio because he had a dope setup. And I used to just be there like... He was
just
like
taking it in.
Yeah, just taking it in, and like, you know, he was like watching me and shit. Like, all right,
that's crazy.
Joe bless. So I met Rockwilder, and Rockwilder, you know, invited us to come to the Method Man Redman listening party. And LL and Russell, a few people, Lior Cohen were there. So yo, after a little cypher started, they're like, it's go time, boy. So, you know, people started putting some money. I think LL put a couple bucks, and he didn't lose his money. So they were happy. And that's how I got my first meeting with Def Jam.
Wow, man. Okay, so and tell me about the freestyle, because I know you're known for your freestyles. I remember seeing you. I think we did a show. I had opened for Maestro. I think you were on that show too back in the days. And people were throwing things on stage, and you were like just freestyling it. And you've always had that knack, you know what I mean? Where does that come from? Is it really just from practicing nonstop? Is it?
Look, I won't lie. Practice makes perfect in anything you do. For me, the more I freestyle, the sharper I am. But
and these times when you're rapping for these people, is it freestyles? Is it like written verses? Like how was it?
When it was a battle, when it was like a heavy cypher, yeah, it was freestyle.
Dope.
You know what I'm saying? That's what it was, because for us, it was impressive. First of all, a battle, you had to go to a beat. See, that's a higher degree of, you know, lyricism, right? Like, okay, cool. If I prepare and I use all of my energy to diss J7, and I got 100 fucking verses, and I don't have any, you know, interruption, I respect the art because they write some clever shit. I love to hear it.
Yeah.
But yo, when you're on a stage and you're looking at hundreds of people that will literally tear your fucking head off if you're not dope, and they throw you a beat that you ain't ready for, that's when the motherfucking men get separated from the boys. You know what I'm saying?
I'm sure you got challenged too a lot, being the white kid from Canada back then. Like you must have been, and this is pre-Eminem. Like these
I got
years.
a great story about that. I went to a studio in the Lower East Side.
Okay.
And parts of New York have been gentrified, but I think the LES is still pretty grimy. But back then it was super grimy. There was like PJs across the street and like a goth fucking club, like Marilyn Manson, like weirdo shit right across the street. Like it,
So the
it looked like
neighborhood was,
it looked like a scene from Blade. You know that movie Blade? So like my manager at the time takes me to a session, but he don't tell me who it's with. And he brings me like into a basement, like levels and levels down underneath this fucking weird goth club with fucking the scariest looking people in New York. Like, what the fuck is this? Some industrial shit. And we go in the basement, and it was a session. I think it was like Missy, and it was a bunch of people from Virginia. So it was like Devontae from Jodeci, Missy, and a couple other people, and Pharrell. Comes out
he's from VA,
right?
yeah.
And he was like under them at the time. Pharrell, like pre-NERD, like mustache with the trucker hat, tight shirt. But he didn't have the Khalees record out, I Hate You So Much Right Now.
Okay.
A real hipster looking dude, you know, so much ahead of his time, obviously. And he kind of comes out, you know, nice to meet you. Oh, this is one of our producers. He's got a track bubbling on the radio now, which ends up being I Hate You So Much Right Now, Khalees. This is like a year before a Super Thug, Nori, you know. And
that was before Super Thug, right?
Yeah. And he had these cats that he was kind of like giving beats to or messing with, you know, some like, you know, hard rock OG dudes with scars on their face, you know, from that neighborhood, you know. And they're like, yo, battle these guys. So I'm like, go time, gotta go. I think a couple girls were with us. So, you know, I didn't want to, you know, look stupid. And, you know, so I get my little bars off. They get their little bars off. And then they come like my face like this, like breathing down my neck, like, you know, thugging me out. You know what I'm saying? No matter what, I'm like thinking to myself, damn, like if these dudes swing on me, like, you know, my manager better hold me down. I'm just looking, I'm like, yo, whatever. You brought me in the situation, you know, take me out if it whatever, you know? So no matter what, I just kept spitting. They just kept pressing me. It was like, you know, anybody ever seen the show Scared Straight when they go to the jail or whatever? Is that what it's called? They were like, oh, like, in your neck. I'm like, damn. But I got my shit off, you know what I'm saying? And they weren't better than me. They were just trying to break my concentration. And first lesson in the music, well, not the first, but a great lesson in this business was as soon as we were done, everybody in the room was like, yo, props. And they shook my hand and they were like, we were just trying to get you off balance. You're a white kid. See where your heart is at. Yo, salute. And you're fucking great. We'd love to work with you.
That's
it was
dope.
they just set it up like that.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
It was that era too. You know what
I'm saying? So, you know, and you know, that was a valuable lesson. No matter what, don't let anybody trick you out of your spot. Don't let anybody trick you out of your position.
Fact.
If you have a vision, you know who you are, you stick to it, and you do it 100%.
And is that around that time that the Limp Bizkit connection, is that where it started really?
This was just afterwards. So this is a little bit before that.
What came first? Was it the Guru situation or
no,
the Limp Bizkit?
It was the Limp Bizkit situation, actually. So I'm spending a lot of time in New York. I'm kind of spending my summers coming back to go to high school, going back there. And at the time, these battles are happening and I'm just trying to like, you know, meet people. So I sat with you know, a lot of labels. I sat down with Def Jam, you know, camped out in my manager's car for 2 days straight until we got the meeting done. It was fucking hot as fuck. You know, we were dying, but this is what it took. Yeah. So I sat with a lot of labels and, you know, a lot of legendary people, and I was able to play my music and to rap for them live. And then one day, I kind of ended up meeting a gentleman named Moet who was managing the product G&B, and they had that Maria Maria record. They won a Grammy for it.
Yeah.
And my co-manager, or whatever you want to call him, he was managing me with my boy Kijana, had met Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit backstage at the Grammys. And in a conversation, he was like, yo, you know, I want to sign a white boy. You know what I'm saying? You have anybody? And
really?
He was like, I have the white boy. You know, you want to meet him? And, you know, a couple days later, they're in New York. I believe it was Soundtrack Studios mastering their album.
The big one that blew up there?
Yeah. So I'm half asleep in the morning. I get a call, and they're like, yo, dude from Limp Bizkit wants to talk to you. He likes your demo, but they're getting on a plane in 45 minutes, so you better fucking run there because there's a lot of traffic. And so we ran from Queens down to the studio, and when I got there, there was kind of like this huge bodyguard that looked like a Nazi, like fucking tattoos. It like looked like something out of the, what's that movie with Edward Norton there, where
American History X.
American History X, dude, right? And there's a midget with a Japanese model, tall, and like a dude from American History X who's his bodyguard. And he's like, just Bless can go into the room. The manager got to stay here. Like that. Like
outside.
Like in the lounge or whatever, right? In the common area. So I walk in, Fred, diamonds shining, red hat.
Classic
He's
Fred
like,
Durst.
Come sit down. I want to play you something. And he played me that Method Man, Redman joint. And he was
Method with the Primo
Premier.
beat?
Yeah.
Wow.
But this is before I knew Premier.
Okay.
So I'm like, bro, this is actually really good.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
all in together now.
exactly.
Record,
so I wasn't really into like rock hip hop, right?
Yeah.
I was on some hip hop shit. But when they played me that record, I was like, oh, this shit is fucking cool.
Yeah.
And everybody in the world knew who they were, but I didn't know if working with them would make sense in my head,
especially
in the moment.
in that era in hip hop, it was different.
But you know, I was smart enough not to say anything, of course.
Yeah.
and be super grateful for the opportunity to sit with this man. You know, he was like, I don't know whether he was the president or VP of Interscope.
Yeah, he had a big position.
Huge, right? So I was grateful for the opportunity, and he just asked me very simply, did you write all this music? And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, I want to sign you. And I was like, wow, like, you know, fireworks are going off in my head. And I'm like, no disrespect, but is it okay if my manager comes in? Because you know what I'm
you're
saying?
solo this whole time.
Yeah. And I'm like, so he's like, oh yeah, of course. I'm sorry that I didn't even realize that that's just the, you know, protocol or whatever. He brings him in and he was like, yo, make a list of who you want to work with as producers and we'll make it happen. Don't talk to any other labels. I want to sign you. You're going to be like my personal, you know, pet project.
Okay.
So we started that process, but I was a minor at the time. So we had to go through kind of like, you know, a different procedure and all that shit to get it approved because I wasn't 18.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, he was like, yo, you know, why don't you come on tour with us? So I joined the Anger Management Tour, and it was Limp Bizkit headlining, Eminem co-headlining, DMX co-headlining, and then you had like a bunch of rock bands like Papa Roach that were popping at the time. Also, salute to them. And
you're on tour, like doing something on Limp Bizkit's set kind of thing?
I'm living on DJ Lethal and the drummer John Otto's bus. They built me a little studio, and we're working on
your
tracks.
project.
Yeah. And Fred's coming on every night between cities to like help with hooks and to listen to what we're doing and shit.
Okay, so you really had a working relationship with
I lived with them. Fred was like my legal guardian, like before I was 18. Like,
and DJ Lethal.
Well, DJ Lethal,
he was with House of Pain before
DJ
that.
Lethal slept, or I slept on top, or him on the bus. My brother. Salute DJ Lethal, man.
Legend.
Salute Fred Durst, you know, and so we made a bunch of music, and I was kind of on that tour to work on music with them.
That's crazy.
And to be able to.
I have seen some crazy footage of you backstage on that tour rapping with battling Young Berg, aka Hitmaker.
Yes.
Which is now like one of the biggest producers in music. He's got all the hits going on.
Yes.
And even as a rapper, he was, I think, signed with the DMX's label.
Exactly.
Right?
So basically, we were both young kids in a similar position. Me being the protege of Limp Bizkit, and us, not us, them headlining.
Yeah.
Let me make that clear. Yeah. And DMX, being who DMX was and still is, R.I.P. DMX, of course.
Definitely.
It was interesting that we were in a similar position.
So these guys like put you against each other.
And we were pretty much almost the same age, So we were kids, maybe 16, 17 max. And so it was my brother Mr. Wiggles from Rocksteady Crew, who was on tour as dancing on the Limp Bizkit show, that kind of took me under his wing, him being a super b-boy historian, a super duper
Rocksteady
hip-hop.
Crew is legendary
super
itself.
duper hip-hop head. And me and him were just always vibing. And he was like, yo, you got to battle dude, like you got to battle Hitmaker, who we called Young Berg at the time, you know what I'm saying? And so he spoke to DMX, and DMX was like, all right, like, let's do it. You know what I'm saying? Let's put 10 G's. And then, you know, Fred was like, all right, cool. 10
Okay,
G's
the guys
is
put some money on that battle.
These guys are making like $1 million a show at that point, probably, right? So the word is they were going to put a little 10 stack or whatever to my memory was. And it was decided that the last night of the tour, we were in Tampa, Florida, that this was going to happen, you know? So everybody went to the club, to the strip club, and, you know, I had some crazy parties, you know, with
Must
these
have been
guys.
legendary on tour.
Oh,
with them,
bro,
man.
and not just that, but, you know, in the height of Limp Bizkit's fucking celebrity, you know, this guy was the biggest rock star in the world at that time. We would stop, you know, in South Carolina at a Walmart, the buses would stop. He would say, bless, you need socks, underwear, toothpaste, whatever shit, right? Because we don't have time to do nothing. We're just going from city to city. And I'm like going through the line to check out. And I'm telling Fred, bro, look, you're on the cover of the National Enquirer kissing Christina Aguilera. And then there's like a mob scene in Walmart. You know what I'm saying? So
wow, man.
I'm like, you know.
How do we not hear about these stories back then in Montreal? You know what I'm saying?
Well, there was no social media. And if you weren't in my circle, you know, maybe.
Yeah, but even like big media out here, like it's something I complain about today. But like, man, you're touring with Limp Bizkit. You're like around all these big dogs, and it's crazy.
Well, there was a couple big articles written, like in the Gazette at the time. So, you know, there was a bit, and I had a kind of.
I guess it's the social media. We're so used to being bombarded.
It's kind of like if you missed the moment, you didn't catch it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they probably asked me a lot of this stuff on Much Music and stuff like that, but you know, a lot of that stuff's not even on YouTube, right?
That's crazy. Is there any battles you've had with other maybe people that became bigger later? Like a guy like you, we're talking about Young Berg. Did you ever, like, was a Pusha T there on that VA little studio session? You know what I'm saying?
Battles, no, but, you know, I became really cool with Tyson Beckford.
Oh, okay.
You know,
he
from
came to
Polo.
Montreal a few times.
You're thinking
for some
Tyrese.
events.
Tyson Beckford?
Tyson Beckford came from Grand Prix at one point.
Oh, yeah, did he? Yeah, that was my homie. So I kind of met him in those times, and he took me under his wing, so I'd like party with him a lot. He would take me out a lot in New York and shit. Salute Tyson
You always
Beckford.
find your way to, like, because there's that Dame Dash story. You sneaked in the Dame Dash
That's a great story, but that's Guru. That has nothing to do with Limp Bizkit.
Okay.
But to finish off that story, so Tampa, Florida, everybody's going out and turning up, and I decided, you know, I'm gonna prepare because I gotta win this shit, right? So it's the end of the show, and we're backstage, and DMX is like sitting on the ground with like a hoodie on his head, like all cryptic and shit, like alone, and he's like, yo, hey, you want to battle my little man? And I'm like, I hear your artist wants to battle me. And he's like, all right, let's do it now. And I'm like, you know, thank you, say no more. I just promised Fred and them that I would get them, so I go into the dressing room, I'm all pumped up, I'm like, yo, let's do it. And Fred's chilling with Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan came to the show.
Come on, man.
This is because there's footage of it, that's why I can talk my
stories,
shit.
bro?
There's footage of this whole battle, right?
Okay,
So like Hulk Hogan happens to be there really randomly. And,
shout out all the Hulkamaniacs out there.
And then the guys from Limp Bizkit and like Jordan Shore, who was a big executive at Interscope. He's actually in the video. You can see him there on the wall. And we kind of go into DMX's dressing room, and it's the last night of the tour, and it's X's birthday. So all the Rough Rider guys are there, and a couple of the low-key members of Destiny's Child are like partying with X, not Beyonce, but the ones who like left the group.
ones who left, yeah.
Like they're there, and it's a shit show.
Yo, it must have been pressure too at your age.
That was big pressure. That was big pressure. I won't front. But I went into that little, you know, battle knowing my deal is gone if I lose. So I'm not gonna lose. So I got to take the lead and be a bully.
Yeah.
Like I was taught in New York.
Yeah.
Right? So freestyle bars, you know, I just went at him, and I had one of those little you remember the disposable cameras, the little Kodak joints, the wind with the flash.
Yeah.
So I had loaded it, I put it in my pocket, and I said, you know, if I feel like he starts to get bars on me, I'm gonna start pulling props out. So I had a little idea in my head, you know, you ain't even an opponent. Matter of fact, let's make it a Kodak moment. And I snapped it, and the flash.
Yeah.
So when that physical shit started, and it started becoming a show, you know. So, you know.
Those are legendary moments.
Shout out, salute Hitmaker and everything he's done. You know, we were just kids, but definitely, you know, we were both spitting for our opportunity, or, you know, to keep our spot.
Absolutely.
You know, and I was very pleasant with the way it, you know, I think it went to my favor, but then, you know, X was, oh, you both won, you know, and X was a great guy, you know, they just wanted to see two young,
hip-hop,
ambitious MCs go at it. It was all love. And then there's that famous picture that maybe you saw Hitmaker post of me, DMX, him, and Fred.
Yes.
We both posted it when X passed away. And, you know, X was a fucking beyond legendary, but such a good soul. And he was fucking super humble. And just to have that moment was one of those other stories you were asking me about, which were solidifying moments that let me know I'm a fool if I stop doing this. I cannot stop doing this.
It's meant to be.
So taking us full circle, that deal kind of didn't end up working out. The paperwork wasn't right. Lawyers were involved. But I was always grateful to Fred and to DJ Lethal for giving me that opportunity. And, you know, I still chat with them sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. You still communicate with any of these guys?
Yeah, we reconnected. You know, Fred hit me on IG, and me and Lethal go back and forth sometimes.
I mean, it must be special, too, for Fred Durst, because you were a kid at that point. So he was kind of like...
And I always appreciated what he did for me. And just having me be in a room with, like, I remember the first night of the fucking Limp tour was in the Meadowlands in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So, you know, he had a lot of celebrity friends at the time, you know, very powerful guy. And I was just, you know, humbled to be in the room, and, you know, he had me next to him and, like, let me introduce you to my artist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so he introduced me to Howard Stern and his kids for the first time, Ben Stiller for the first time. And, you know, I had the opportunity to, you know, become kind of cool with Carson Daly. He was on MTV.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of great stories, you know.
That's really dope, man.
And even though whatever the paperwork, whatever the deal didn't end up getting finalized or whatever, I kind of had these experiences which, you know, helped get my confidence
up. Of course, man. These are priceless experiences you're talking about. So how did that lead? Because now I guess after that, the big moment was the Guru, I guess, connection.
Yeah, so not even a year later, I stayed in, you know, close contact with my brother, Mr. Wiggles from Rocksteady, who was on that tour, who set up that battle. So another one of my OGs. He's
in your songs too, in one of your songs on Platinumberg album.
So when we decided to do my first album, the Platinumberg album, I brought I brought Mr. Wiggles out here, and he, you know, came to stay at my crib, and we shot my first video, you know, of course, you know, so he was a big influence on me. And, you know, of course, salute Wiggles and the whole Rocksteady crew, Crazy Legs, everybody. And this is how I end up meeting Guru. Wiggles that summer, so let's say 6 months later, he's like, yo, I want to try and put you down with Rocksteady as a Rocksteady MC. And for me, starting as a B-boy, it couldn't get better. Right?
Rocksteady crew is like probably one of the most legendary B-boy crews out there,
so
right?
So Rocksteady always had Rocksteady Anniversary Weekend. Mm-hmm. And that's how I first met Tony Touch and you know, all these guys. So they had me come battle one of these cats that were down with them, Arsonist.
Yes,
right. He was right. So they were lining up me to, you know, to battle these guys to propose
really,
me membership.
All these things that are happening in your career so far is really just based off your skills. It's really like, yo, come here. There's this guy. You got to battle.
Bro, there was no shortcuts. There was no nothing, bro. There was me taking the Greyhound to New York, sleeping on my manager's floor, being humble, being hungry, and rapping my ass off for anyone who would listen to me. I had no help. You know, I've heard, and this is actually a great question. I've heard rumors when I was a kid that my dad was an entertainment lawyer or had any
I remember
involvement.
Hearing these kind of stories. But that's, you know,
that was such a joke to me because anybody who knows me knows that wasn't my story. But, you know, I guess people who wish they were in a certain position had to make up shit to try and
we hear stories
me.
Like that about rappers later on, even today.
But truth be told, nobody in my family was ever involved in the music business. And my folks were supportive of me as being their son, but they were not crazy about me being in the music business, nor did they have the means to help me any way, shape, or form. So this was really, you know, just me believing in myself enough to, not stop doing it. And yeah, I had no financial backing. I had no other tricks up my sleeve than to be as nice as I can possibly be on the mic.
Yeah, let's be clear.
So that kind of, me becoming close with Wiggles, he invited me out to Rocksteady Weekend, and he said, I'm going to try and, get you inducted into Rocksteady. That was the plan.
Wow.
So I said, yo, fucking, I'll be there, because Wiggles was living in Vegas at the time. So he said, meet me in New York, and I'm going to introduce you to everybody, right? And before that could happen, I end up meeting Guru. The night before was like the Saturday, and then the last event was the Sunday. My manager had known Guru. He had, I think, gotten some extras or some chicks for one of their videos.
The legendary Guru.
He seen Guru and he was like, yo, jump in the van. I'll bring you to your car. So, he came to pick me up. Guru's in the van. It's go time.
Of course. Threw
on the beat CD, freestyle for Guru. Same thing with Fred. He's like, we started ciphering. He started spitting. I started spitting. I'm like, wow.
You're rapping with Guru.
This is the next, right? Yeah. Forrest Gump moment here. You know what I'm saying? and I'm like, yo, bro, like, even if I never see this guy again, like, I'm just humbled.
Absolutely,
right? I'm just honored. And he's like, yo, I got a little label. It's called Ill Kid. I want to sign you. Would you be interested? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'd be interested, bro. Because anybody who knows me, my first favorite group was Eric B and Rakim.
Okay.
My second favorite group is Gangstarr. Regardless of my friendship with Guru and Premier and
they're legends.
And right, like prior to me meeting him, he was one of my goats. So a lot of people had made a lot of promises and never fallen through. So like I said, I was just happy to have that time. We drank some beers. We fucking ciphered. Hey, bro, take my number.
Yeah.
If I ever hear from you again, it's an honor.
Yeah.
Well, the next day happens. I'm backstage at the Rocksteady shit. Kweli is there, I remember.
Wow.
I'm there with Wiggles. MOP is there. I'm having a fucking great weekend.
For real.
Who could ask for more,
for
right?
Real. And when you do these trips, you go solo.
One of my homies drove me down in his fucking busted Honda Civic.
Okay.
Shout out my homie Pro. You know what I'm saying? One of my homies. He drove me down. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have money to go. That was a bizarre story. One of our homies like borrowed money from a chick so we could pay the gas and have a room.
That's crazy.
And we just went down and whatever was going to happen. And this weekend ended up being, pretty fruitful. Life-changing, right? So you never know. It's these moments. You always got to try. And so we went out there and I ended up meeting Guru and I figure maybe I'll never hear back from him. That's all good. Next day, I'm at this Rocksteady shit. They had me come on and spit a little something at the end of the show. It was dope. And I get a call from a blocked ID. I answer it and I'm like, hello. And he's like, yo, it's Guru. I'm outside. And I'm like, where? He's like, I'm in a Benz truck. I'm waiting outside. Come outside. I told you I was going to see you today.
That's crazy.
I was like, I come outside. He's sitting on his Benz in like a Hawaiian, like Tony Soprano kind of like bowling shirt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Big Pun era shit.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
And he's like, get in the car. And I'm like, all right, where are we going? He's like, I'm gonna show you the town. Take you to Brooklyn. So boom, we're driving. And we just had a wild night. We partied, we drank like fucking animals. He got into a fight. I jumped on a bouncer. Bouncer took his joint or something and fucking it was a fucking wild night, right? And we hung out till 5, 6 in the morning. And after a night of partying, going to the after hours, drinking, screaming, blah, blah, my voice is blown out.
Yeah.
And he's like, 6 in the morning, sun's coming up. Yo, I got a spot on my album. 1 spot left. I'm gonna throw somebody off the track to put you on it. Could you record it now before you go home back to Canada? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think I have my voice left. And he's like, it's okay. We'll drink some tea, some honey, some lemon, whatever. And we're gonna do this shit, right? Boom. So we go to the studio and I barely had had my voice left, but that was the first track I ever recorded with him for his Ballhead Slick in the Click album.
Yep.
And that was the first release that I was ever on, was after that night. It actually got recorded the same fucking night.
That's crazy. And
Guru,
that was him introducing his label pretty much, that
so
project.
he wanted me on it if he was gonna mess with me. So that collab happened, and there was so many great artists on that album. And this is what started our friendship, our brotherhood, and his, him being the guy he was. He was one of the only people in this business who didn't, let me down, who kept his word. You know what I'm saying? And he sent the contract a week later, and it was on from there. That's
legendary.
He brought me on tour. He made me his hype man, and he was the one who gave me the opportunity to perform in all of his shows. So I wasn't opening for him. I was his hype man, and in the middle of his show, the DJ would stop the shit.
He'd give you your moment.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So, I could never repay him for that, or thank him and the Gangstarr, crew for what they did.
That's legendary, man. Gifted, unlimited rhymes, universal.
Salute my brother, man.
R.I.P. to the legend, definitely. Do you think a guy like Guru gets the respect he should get? Because I was a big Gangstarr fan. Moment of Truth, Hard to Earn, even the greatest hits had the full clip and everything. That era, I was heavy on Gangstarr. And to me, he's one of he should be in a lot of top 10 lists or stuff like that.
To me, for groups, he's got to be in everybody's top 10, if not top 5. For me, groups, you got to say a Wu, Eric B. and Rakim, a Tribe Called Quest, a Gangstarr. I mean, they got to be in your top 3 or 4, And I think that the people who know what's up, that they definitely get, they have some of the most iconic bodies of work, right? Their catalog is unfuckwittable, and their music has aged so amazing.
Absolutely. It's classic shit, man.
Right?
It's kind of like the definition of hip hop almost. Like you want to introduce somebody to hip hop, go listen to a Gangstarr album.
But when he passed, I definitely feel immediately, soon after, he was not getting the the props that he deserved for his impact on the game.
Absolutely.
And for his contributions to the culture. And I was really happy on the last Gangstarr album that Premier was able to finally honor him with that album and put him back on that, that jumbo screen that I think Spotify has. So when I saw him and Preem on that was a fucking proud moment for me. That was a full circle moment for me, because he did so much for me and for a lot of people that he really deserved to be honored in the way that he was finally, but it took a few years.
And Primo to put together a good album. I think it was a complicated thing to do with that Solar story and all that.
It was a very complicated thing to do, and actually, I was really proud, and not a lot of people might know this, but the first track that Preem worked on that Gangstarr album is called Bless the Mic.
Yes.
That was an unreleased Bless Guru track.
Wow.
Hence it's called Bless the Mic, that we were going back and forth. We each had 2 verses on it. Okay?
Shit.
Somehow my files found its way into Solar's hands after Guru passed. He stole all of Guru's masters. Okay? And he kind of ransomed it back to Premier.
Yeah.
But he sold Premier verses that he didn't have the rights
That's crazy.
to. And Preem didn't know, I'm sure, because I seen in an interview, he even said, Solar had said, okay, these are all things we did between 2005 and him passing in 2010. But then he opens my session with Guru, Bless the Mic, and sees 2001. So the first demo I recorded for Guru's label was Bless the Mic and Diamonds Are Forever.
Diamonds Are Forever.
Guru ends up flipping the concept. It's unreleased. That was the first single with J. Cole.
Damn.
And the first track, the actual vocals are from our session.
That's crazy. Okay, that must be special still.
So for me, 19 years later, some of my earliest work as a kid when I started doing this finally made its way on to Guru being honored properly. You know what I'm saying?
On the latest Gangstarr album.
Although I would have loved for it to happen differently, because I would have given Preem the vocals no problem, at least it found its way back to where it needed to be.
That's dope.
And I think Guru would have been really happy with that project. I mean, I know he would have been.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know,
Are you
salute
still cool?
to Preem.
Are you still cool with like Gangstarr Foundation, Primo, and all these guys?
Of course. You know, anytime Preem comes to town, I'm always with him. You know, when I'm in New York, you know, we touch base.
I don't think we ever got a Primo Bless collab, right?
No, we didn't.
The street's been waiting for that one for a long time, bro.
We didn't. And, you know, we definitely have tried to make it happen over the years. But, you know, when... You know, right before Guru passed, they weren't really on speaking terms. And Preem used to always, like, when I would bump into Preem, he'd be like, yo, what's up with your man? Get him on the phone. And, you know, it was just...
you were kind of in the middle.
It was a crazy time, you know what I'm saying? But you know, me and Premier have always been great.
And Solar, so did you know Solar? Did you ever meet Solar?
I was with Guru the first time that he met Solar. We were at a restaurant. At
What's Bless's impression on Solar? Give me Bless's impression.
We didn't vibe off the gate. You know, I thought he was kind of a little bit. To me, my vibe on him was that he was a bit of like a shifty dude. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't the biggest fan, but, you know, nothing crazy. And, you know, Guru kind of at that time wasn't chilling with him much. He was just coming around through one of our homies. You know, I believe it was Black Jeezy, you know what I mean, brought this dude around, you know. And
it's crazy because
then years later, things unfolded the way it did. It didn't really surprise me, you know what I'm saying? Because the dude was shifty and clearly very jealous of Premier and very jealous of what Preem and Guru had built. He kind of wanted to be in that conversation, which was laughable,
Absolutely.
So however things played out, it didn't surprise us that the dude wasn't, you know what I mean, all there.
So you know, we're talking about Guru and stuff. So for sure, Guru came to Montreal, kicked it with you out here.
Bro, Guru came to Montreal dozens of times, spent New Year's here many years in a row.
He liked it out here?
Loved it, bro.
And it's
What's
crazy.
Not to love, bro?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people I'm sure are going to see this who remember or who bumped into me and Guru out and about here and in New York. You know?
And those are times when, like, okay, you were releasing your first project, the Platinumberg project.
And we were partying like animals every night.
and you got Manifest producing on there. You got Ray producing a lot. And at the very same time, Ray is probably working on the 51450, the legendary Quebec rap project.
Same era.
Right?
I think he had done that a little bit, like a year before, maybe.
Okay, it was. How come? That's another collab I've always wanted. I know you talked about it with him.
Yeah.
We needed a Sans Pression Bless collaboration.
We actually did a couple unreleased joints during the pandemic.
Oh, for real?
We did. Salute SP.
Okay.
We didn't get a chance to drop them, but we did kind of work on some shit.
Okay.
And, you know, these guys are, you know, also my OGs. I was a kid in Ray's studio, and whoever was popping on the French side was always popping in. So I go way back with SP. I go way back with, you know... everybody.
Yeah, I see you at all these events, and I see you know all Rough Sound. And,
Ruff's my homie.
You know what I mean? Like
me and Ruff got a couple records on my upcoming project.
Damn, okay, that's interesting.
Me and Ruff got a couple records.
So you had a whole squad back then when you put out the project. You put out the Platinumberg thing. I know Quite Sane. He was your official DJ. Shout out my boy Quite Sane, legendary DJ out here.
Just saw him the other day.
Yeah, you had Dexter D. You had TFS. You had a few artists and stuff.
Yes.
And through the years, now we see you're kind of like doing your own thing.
Yeah.
Are you still cool with the people you used to work with and the whole squad? Because you had kind of a movement going on.
I saw TFS tonight before I came here.
Okay.
Dexter D's still my brother.
Shout out to the guys.
Manifest still the homie. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you know, that's still my brothers and they're my brothers for life. And I was always the kind of person who I wanted to share whatever I had with my people, right? Because you don't enjoy the ride alone.
Well, Ray, I think, worked with... who was talking about Guru? Because I have the podcast going on, and we're talking with... I think it was Ray, or he was mentioning stories with Guru. His car got towed, or Guru
I brought
paid
Ray
for him. Like,
that's a true story. I brought Ray to New York
to
work on the early Platinumberg songs, which were my first releases on Guru's label. Then they got repackaged onto the Platinumberg album.
Because you had a Canadian deal here with Donald K. Donald.
Exactly. So I found
you had all kinds of deals.
I found that myself. And Guru was, you know, cool enough to let me do my own shit with my own label in Canada.
Okay.
As long as, you know, he had the rights in the US. So we were partners, basically, business partners. So, you know, I'm finding a label that's willing to fund the videos so he doesn't have to pay for it. So
That's
it's helping
dope.
our
It's a win-win.
it's helping our cause. So Guru was cool enough to let me use Talking to Me and My Time and
Classic
those early
joint.
tracks for the Platinumberg album.
I was just listening to Talking to Me right now. Classic joint, man.
Thank you, and salute Ray. Great production.
Yeah.
So Guru brought me to New York to record these tracks properly at D&D Studios.
Crazy.
So Ray drove
Where
down.
Gangstarr would record all their shit.
Ray drove down with his MPC and, you know, touched Premiere's, you know, equipment and shit. And, you know, that was a great moment for both of us as, you know, as homies. And we stayed all night recording the vocals to these early tracks. And the car got towed at 7 o'clock. They tow.
Yeah.
We got down there 7:15 or whatever. And it was like, fuck, like $400 to get your car US out of the tow. That was a lot of money for us back then, you know? And so Guru was nice enough to pay to get his car back so we wouldn't be stranded.
That's crazy,
you know.
man.
So yeah, so you know, a lot of you know, great stories.
Hearing all these stories and stuff, and like being an English MC out of Montreal, do you feel like you were maybe ahead of your time?
To be very honest, you know, maybe not going to sound like the most humble thing I could
but
say.
in all humbleness,
I
you know?
feel like I was very ahead of my time, but not talking about necessarily my skill set or whatever. I just mean that maybe the world wasn't ready for a Canadian artist yet. Certainly not out of Quebec. You know, M was still relatively new in those days.
Yeah, that was
you know
right
what
at
I'm
the
saying?
beginning of like
he was new.
The white rapper era.
I came
kind of
just
thing.
after him.
Yeah.
So the credibility factor, people didn't have their minds wrapped around it like they do now. Hip hop's so multicultural, it doesn't surprise anybody that a white dude could spit now.
Yeah, now it's
Right?
different. But back
right?
then,
But back then it was like you know,
it
they
was
looked
almost
at
like
you.
a show and tell. Like, oh, come, I got to show you this kid. Like,
so
you know what I mean?
it was definitely like that,
Yeah.
right? So people needed some time to wrap their heads around that. Drake doesn't come for 10 years later. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? I met Drake early in his career. Salute to him. You know,
Crazy.
he came up to me, I remember, at Stylist DJ Awards. You remember
Yup,
that? I think
yup.
you might have even been at the
No,
Stylist
I wasn't
No,
there.
you were
I
never
wasn't
there?
there, but I know about
There was a
that.
couple people from Montreal I
Yeah.
remember seeing there in Toronto. Drake was still on Degrassi. I was nominated for a little thing for my collaboration with Rod Digga, Jealousy.
Yep.
And I remember Drake coming up to me like, yo, bro, like, I fuck with you as a lyricist. I always studied your pen, and you know, you're one of the only cats I look up to as an MC. And you know, he told me, yo, I'm trying to do my thing in music, and we knew who he was from Degrassi.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then to see the doors he kicked in for Canada, you know what I'm saying? So now I just feel like this is the best time to be releasing music. We're coming off of a heavy time in society. People want to chill. People want to, you know, vibe. You know what I mean? And the world is at an interesting place, you know? Canada's no longer a no man's land for hip hop.
That's true for music in general.
Right.
Like, we got big stars
The
out.
borders have kind of melted away with social media a
Yeah.
little more. So it's a very interesting time. So it's no coincidence that, you know, I said, I got to play to my strong suit and use my time wisely, you know, for those who might be, you know, checking this out outside of Montreal and outside of Quebec. You know, we were on a curfew. You know, we were on
was intense,
confinement.
man.
It was
Yeah.
basically house arrest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We had to sneak around to go to be at the studio and shit. You know what I mean? And for the first time since I was 17, since I was that hungry kid taking the bus to New York, sleeping on floors, I had nothing to focus on but my craft.
A lot of people took advantage of that time.
Right? And that kept me sane again.
for
You know,
real.
that was a lifesaver for me again. And when I reflect on everything, I've been through a lot of ups and downs in my career in life. We all have. We've all lost people. We've all been up and down. You know what I'm saying? The one thing that I always had to look forward to was hip hop.
Yeah.
And that has been the biggest gift. It hasn't been how much money I made. It's been the people that I've been able to connect with and the people I've been able to impact and giving myself something to look forward to that's not shallow, that doesn't fade with time.
Exactly.
And once again, it held true during this fucking crazy time in the world. You know?
I seen you with Nicholas Craven in the studio.
Yeah.
We talked about Rough Sound.
Yep. Lou Phelps, K Tranada's brother, was just with us in the studio. I was playing him some joints.
Okay, so the project is looking interesting.
Hey man, like I said at the beginning when we first started talking, bro, anybody whose music is authentic, who I believe is talented, I'm happy to fuck with, whether they're here or just starting out. Let's make great music. Let's make 100%. Some iconic shit happen. That's all I give a fuck about.
Man. We were talking about Guru earlier, but real quick, what would be the best lesson you learned from Guru?
You know, you're not the first person to ask me that. I learned a lot of lessons from Guru, from being around Guru, but what he always, said to me and was really trying to impress upon me and drill into my head was learn from my mistakes. I'm here to teach you the pitfalls of the game. Don't make the mistakes that I had. And, the love and the support that he gave me as an artist who was just starting, I really am forever grateful. This guy, told me crazy stories of, negative shit that happened to him. Yeah. And he would just say, bro, don't ever put yourself in that position. Don't ever put yourself in a lot of positions.
Yeah, those are gems, man. Those are gems you keep forever.
Yeah.
So, I have other podcasts with French artists and stuff, and sometimes we have guys that make music, produce, or have some songs on a video game, or this and that, or they got a little feature verse on a video game song, and it's dope. We big it up. But rarely do we have a guy, or I think it's the only time we can say that a Montreal rapper was on a big video game, like as a character on Def Jam Fight for New York.
Thank you.
That's crazy.
Thank you. Yes.
How does that happen, bro?
Forrest Gump shit. But you
had a lot of these moments in your career.
I did have a lot of these moments, and hopefully I'll continue to have a lot of these moments. But exactly. But to be very honest with you, and this is the crazy thing, I could sit here and play cool and be like, yeah, it's just because I'm the illest, and but let me tell you something. For every lucky thing that I've ever had in my career, for anything you could read off my bio and be like, dope, there was 100 disappointments and 100 rejections. Yeah. There was 100 people who promised that we were going to do something, and it never went anywhere. So I shot a lot of shots that missed, but I got some in.
But you shot a lot of shots. You know what I mean? Like, it's important to say that. Like, I think I saw a clip.
Because it's the truth.
Yeah, but it's dope. And I think that's what makes the story that we're telling right now, you know what I mean? And thinking now that you can go and play a game and like you're a character like fighting Snoop Dogg or fighting Busta Rhymes, or it's crazy, you know what I mean? I think it's an accomplishment in itself.
It definitely is humbling, and it's something that's still surreal to me, even years later.
Because music business, a lot of things can happen on the way or this and that.
Yeah.
But like if whoever decided to make that call and put you on that platform, it means something, you know what I mean? Just that in itself.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story if you want to know. But like I said, it's important for me to reiterate that 100 shots, one go in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I had to develop that thick skin to say, hey, you know what? Rejection's just part of the process. And if you're consistent and you fucking...
But it's hard for a lot of MCs and artists, man, like, because... being told, like, let's say, oh, it's not good, or I don't like it, or I don't fuck with it. A lot of artists, they take pride in what they do, you know what I mean?
Bro, it's still hard for me, man. It's still hard for me. All these years later, I'm still reinventing myself. I'm still, got to make sure that my shit is the sharpest and the tightest it can possibly be. I take great pride in that. You know what I'm saying? But it's really important for me to share with other people that just because you get rejected or because you might be ahead of your time does not mean that you cannot do some legendary shit. Sometimes it just takes time for things to click into place. Jay-Z could not get a record deal. He was ahead of his time. They formed Rockefeller to, have an outlet to put Jay out.
Yeah.
And when you asked me before, do I think I was ahead of my time? Fuck yeah, I was a victim of that. I started my little Platinumberg imprint so I would have a lane to try and put out music. You know what I'm saying? Get my own distribution. And we're still doing that. Because at the end of the day, if you wait for somebody else's permission to be great, you're gonna stay at the back of the line forever, my boy.
For real, man.
You know what I mean?
That's where you gotta. I mean, the hustle mentality is so important in this game, especially back then. You really had to go out there and make things happen.
Yes.
Give us that story about the
story.
Def Jam.
So I was on tour with the Beatnuts, I believe. Shout out Psycho Les and Juju from the Beatnuts. I got the opportunity after we released the Platinumberg album to do my own tour now. And I was going to be the special guest on the Beatnuts tour. I think we did like 12 or 13 cities in Canada, Canadian tour. And, you know, we had a fucking blast. The tour went all around the country. And, you know, certain dates we were flying, certain dates we were driving in like a Sprinter van, Platinumberg crew and Beatnuts, just vibing, bonding, joking.
I've heard some Juju stories.
Just having a great time. Oh, yeah, they love to drink. I love to drink. We both, you know, had multiple vices. We'll leave it there. Yeah. And you know, it was epic. You know what I'm saying? And I was so fortunate to be able to bring Quite Sane and my brother TFS and share these moments with them. You know.
Yeah.
So the tour stopped in Vancouver, and they invited me up to the radio. You know, up to the radio at Vancouver, and 50 was really hot at the time. So they started throwing me some, you know, bunch of medley of 50 Cent instrumentals, and I was just going off the top of the dome. And that day I was really on. Like, it was just one of those days that I felt great about the freestyle, and I was like, yo, I need a copy of that. You know what I mean? And I don't know, like a couple months later, New Year's Eve, they voted this the top freestyle that they had on the show.
Okay.
And somebody from EA Sports, from the video game company, heard this freestyle and got it in his head that he would like to have at least one Canadian in the game, and they were developing
off a freestyle.
Off the radio freestyle that
Wow.
I heard. And he wanted my catchphrase to be, "You think you could freestyle with Bless," because that's how he discovered me. So the guy
that's what you say in the game.
That was them.
You can freestyle with Bless.
That was them who said that's going to be their hook, you know? So they somehow called the radio station and got my contact through my record label. And they called me and they were like, "Hey, this is, so-and-so from EA Sports. And we're developing a game called Def Jam Fight for New York. I don't know if you've heard of it, but we'd like you to be in the game." I thought it was a joke. I hung up on the guy.
Oh, you did?
I say, yeah, no doubt. Called on the landline, old school shit. Guy calls back. "No, it's not a joke, man. I'm not, you could look up who I am." I said, "Well, if it's serious, for sure I'm down. But I want to come out there to do the voiceovers and, you know, really like..."
Did they have you like plugged up with the things where
plugged
you
up?
move
They
and
didn't.
shit?
I mean,
did that exist even back then? I don't even know.
It did. And
Okay.
that development center was some Dr. Evil shit. It was like a mega complex out in the suburbs of Vancouver. And bro, they had soccer fields and football fields and a Starbucks just for the employees.
Wow.
And a food court of restaurants
Like
just
dope
for the
restaurant.
employees. Like, it was like an IKEA mega conglomerate setup for a video game development. And they had half a replica NBA court where they were hooking people up.
Shit.
But for me, you know, I'm not a fucking MMA fighter.
Yeah.
They didn't need to get the move right. But they brought me in. They had Snoop on one side in another room doing his voiceovers, and they had me doing
That's
my lines.
crazy, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't easy because this is the first time doing voiceover work. You know, you have to scream, you have to do it for a couple of hours, and they have to get every possible line that they would use.
Yeah.
So they gave me a script. I read that, and then I started ad-libbing, you know what I mean? Putting my own little shit in. So you think you could freestyle with Bless was them, but then I put in the scummy, "Maybe I should fight you with one hand next time." That was like a little nod to Tony Soprano for fun. It was like a joke, you know? They put that in, and and that was it, man. And I was fortunate enough for them to take 2 of the songs from Platinumberg and to put it in the game and on the soundtrack. That was
Crazy,
really,
man.
That was really great for me, man. So yeah, so that was kind of the first, not maybe the first, but where I really started getting like international recognition, where I'd be in like a barbershop in Miami and they wouldn't even know Bless the rapper. They'd be like, "That's Bless from the video game."
That's crazy. Yeah, for real.
And I'd tell people, "You know, I do music." And they're like, "I mean, we figured, but because my album wasn't out in the States yet."
Yo, that's interesting. People would recognize you for the video game because it was big. It was a huge game.
Yeah.
People still like talk about this game as one of the, you know, legendary fighting games.
But you know what was fucked up? They made me sign a non-disclosure that I could not talk about the game until it's released.
Okay.
And it took a full year for the game to get released.
Damn.
So I'm like,
And you know all the big names that are on the game,
bro, I know what's going on. And I'm like, and then the promo's starting to come out and I can't say anything.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, yo, I just did the biggest shit I've done in my career and I can't talk about it. And almost a year passed and then it exploded, right? Because there was a lot of money behind it. And people were like, why the fuck when you were on our radio show you didn't what is this? But I was like, I wasn't allowed to, man. They made me sign an NDA.
That must have been a nice bag too, talking about like music business stuff. I mean,
For
a lot of people
for the time it was a nice bag. It definitely helped keep me afloat as an artist for a while to let me continue doing my thing. But again, the music I make is authentic, and when I do an interview, I'm very real. I love to share my experiences to motivate people. When you do, let's say a major movie or a video game, and you're still coming up, they offer you something, and you don't have much room to negotiate.
Exactly.
So for all of you who were probably, the obvious question, I didn't have a big royalty on the game because they know, points.
You read my mind.
a tenth of a point could be big money. Yeah. So they offered me,
but it's still worth it.
They offered me a fair, thank you note for my time. They brought me out there. They put two songs in the game. They gave me infinite exposure. I'm grateful. I hate when people say I got fucked in this business.
No,
I got screwed over because they don't realize that exposure is priceless.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
all
also
these years later,
you were new in the game, bro. Like you said, you don't have any negotiation power really because you don't.
And all these years later, look at these artists who were big when major companies were funding them and said, fuck the label. They robbed me. I should have made more. But the second the label wasn't messing with them anymore, boom.
A lot of them.
So that's business. If you can do it alone, you would have done it alone.
Yeah.
If somebody's an investor and they take the lion's share, you're not mad at the bank when they do that. Why would you be mad at your manager? Or why would you be mad at a company that funded your career? These people help you get to where you need to be. And if you could do it alone, go for it. I've never been able to do it completely alone.
That's interesting.
I managed myself for a long time, but I'm grateful to have people around me who believe in my project enough to dedicate their time to it. You know what I'm saying?
That's really dope. That's
shout out my manager, Lenny Levine. Shout out Jill. Shout out Rabah. Shout out the whole team. Shout out my brother, Mano Sound Machine.
Absolutely,
for, locking in the studio with me for years and believing in me enough to, dedicate his time and his energy.
And for the people out there watching, we're talking a lot about the come up, but after the Platinumberg album, there was Book of Bless, there was Spoils of War.
Yep.
The mixtape with Clinton Sparks.
There was some singles I sporadically dropped
so there's been a lot of product that's been put out, and also a lot of dope collaborations. If I would ask you, what's some of your favorite collabs? Because I know there was Vado, there was R.I.P. Fred the Godson, Rah Digga. There's a lot of them, man.
So most of the collaborations I did were with the artist.
Yeah.
Right? I would go to New York or they would come here.
Okay.
So everything I recorded with Guru ever, we either did in D&D in New York or in Ray's mom's house, first of all. So, we recorded that in, and then I remember when we did a feature with Tony Touch for the Book of Bless, Psycho Les from the Beatnuts came. They were in town for Swirl. I was hosting Swirl.
Legendary
so I brought these
rave.
guys down who, I was touring with or working with. And Tone was like, yo, I'll do the record. And Les just came to the studio just to drink and didn't even, I don't have anything written. And, Ray was like tripping, we had, a great time. So every feature kind of had its own story. Standouts, of course, my collabs with Guru,
that
put
goes
me in the
without
conversation. Rah Digga, cool as hell, homegirl. She was cool enough to come to Toronto. We shot an amazing video with Marc-Andre De Bruin, who was killing it on Much those days. He directed a great video for us. We had a sick time. Recently, I would say my collab with Vado was amazing. Shout out Vado, but Fred the Godson. So Fred the Godson, I met.
Super dope rapper.
And I was actually listening to a lot of his mixtapes when I was writing for that project.
Yeah.
So I reached out and I was like, yo, I don't know if you're familiar with my history, but boom, boom, boom. I was affiliated with Guru and all of this stuff. And Fred reached back like, I know who you are. I fuck with your bars. Let's work. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, well, I'm gonna be in New York next week. If you want, let's get it knocked out. Bro, this guy invited me to Diamond District Studios, introduced me to Arsonist and the Heatmakers.
Wow.
You know what I mean? They gave me the session for free. They were like, come to our spot and record the fucking thing.
Okay, he was a real one.
He was a super real one. And he kind of like took it upon himself to, be one of the next people to really champion me, in New York and reintroduce me to a lot of people.
Oh,
and
damn.
so he's the one who personally called Vado and was like, yo, Bless is my guy. Wow. I would love for you guys to do a record. And Vado told me straight, Fred really fucking
vouched for you.
You know what I'm saying? And he had Vado come couple months later.
Must be crazy, like when Fred passed away, like due to COVID, I think, right?
That was such a shock. And we had such a good time shooting the video. We were out there shooting for 3 days. He brought us to the strip club. He introduced me to all his peoples, and we had a great rapport. You know what I mean? Shout out to, all of Fred's crew, everybody, that I had the pleasure to connect with from Fred, because of Fred. For anybody who ever met Fred, he was a special soul. Beyond being a monster beast lyricist.
Crazy.
You know what I'm saying? To me, Fred is like a big L.
Yeah.
Fred is a master.
Definitely a lot of people paid more attention after his untimely passing, honestly. But
which is such a shame. I don't know why we do this in hip hop, but all that to say, Fred was an absolute monster. And, he was just a great guy. Everybody who knew Fred, his energy was undeniable.
Cool to hear, man.
He was truly Fred the Godson. He was truly Godson. And it was shocking, this COVID thing comes out of nowhere in January, February. Bam, March shit closes down. And Fred was one of the first people I knew who had COVID. And I had messaged him, you good, da-da-da. He was answering,
damn.
Yo, I'm good, bro. But he was asthmatic.
Big boy too,
Exactly. And it was a total shock that he passed away.
R.I.P. to Fred the Godson.
R.I.P. to Fred the Godson. So my collab with him was super special before he passed, because the video came out so dope, and the energy, you just heard that, chemistry in the music. So yeah, man, and he's a legend, bro.
100%, man. Winding down, like we covered a lot of what you're doing and what you're coming up with. I can't not mention you had a podcast popping in the last year or two, the MOT podcast, where you had guests like Onyx or Raekwon or a lot of local guys.
Yeah.
What's up with the podcast? Is that something you still want to pursue?
Absolutely. Well, the podcast, MOT podcast, was named after our favorite album, Moment of Truth.
Yeah.
Always, I always make it, a point to, continue to promote, Guru's legacy and not that he needs my help, but that's just something that, that's, very important to me to honor him. So the podcast kind of came about, the producers had reached out to me and they were like, yo, we know you have so many stories and so many, old friendships and shit. Why don't we do a podcast? So I started reaching out to just the people I fuck with. I've known Ray for a fucking long time. Salute Frenchie Blanco. You know what I'm saying? He made that happen. But, I had met Ray a gazillion times back in the day. And so many people like Snow, an old friend of mine. We brought Snow on.
Crazy. Dope conversation that was.
Yeah, and I wanted to, have an outlet to tell some great stories that I know need to be told that have maybe not been fully told.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's something that I really enjoyed doing and that I'm passionate about doing. But unfortunately, once COVID started and there was no touring and nobody was coming to the city, I kind of had a difference in opinion creatively with the producers of the show, that they kind of wanted me, to be honest, to do more local content, which I fuck with. But I want to continue pushing the envelope. I want to continue, telling some epic stories. And I didn't feel like doing it just over Zoom like everybody else is doing it.
That wasn't the wave.
So I said, let me refocus. let me take a little time. Let's wait for the world
Things
to
to
bounce
open up,
back.
yeah.
And when things open back up and it's possible, I'm definitely
Okay, so it's still
be
something,
happy to continue. But you know, my first love is always the music. So once the music is rolling, I can refocus on different projects.
You mentioned something interesting about the local. They want you to focus on local. Do you think, because I don't think we've had Bless collab with, is there a Bless with French artists from out here? Collaborations and stuff like that?
Not much.
Is that something you...
I did a track with Freeman back in the day.
Okay.
For my Boy in the Bills project.
But is that something looking back that you think like, oh man, I should have maybe, like, example, the SPs or the Yvon Crevé or the whoever was popping, you know
At the time, I think it made less sense.
It did. You're right.
But right now, I think it's making more and more sense. And it's something that I'm definitely thinking about.
Okay.
But it's got to be done organically and it's got to be done authentically.
I respect it.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just got to be done tastefully, properly.
Okay, I respect it.
But
so,
it's definitely a possibility, yeah.
So tell the people the name of the project that is coming out, that you're working on right now, that's coming out, and where they can reach you on your socials.
The project we're working on right now, it's an EP. It's called All Roads Lead to Chaos. First joint, title track, All Roads Lead to Chaos, out right now. Second single, we just dropped it this week. It's called In My Shoes.
Yes, sir.
Both, of course, produced by Mano Sound Machine. You know the team. My social, you can hit me up on Instagram at Official Bless. My YouTube channel, Bless Platinumberg. And...
a lot of content on there, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Before we get out of here, I want
to make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get all the alerts and, you know what I mean, see all the content and all that we
100%, man. We appreciate you coming through On the Spot with J7, presented by ONZMTL. That's how we do it every time. Only quality conversations over here. But before we out of here, I'm going to give you like 10 names and you give me quick first things that come to your mind, all right? DJ Quite Sane.
Maniac on tour, one of the most talented DJs to ever come out of our city, and a narcoleptic. He falls asleep very easily.
I've seen we won't get into all that.
Shout out Quite Sane. That's my
big shout out to Quite Sane, the legend. Limp Bizkit.
OGs in the game, priceless moments. Very, very early time in my career.
Okay. Sans Pression.
Trailblazer for Quebec hip hop, for French hip hop. Too many stories on tour, Sona, a lot of alcohol we consumed together once upon a time, and we'll leave that there.
Okay, DJ Premier.
One of the most solid figures in hip hop. Major influence musically, even prior to me knowing Guru, and one of the best big homies I could ask for.
Dope. Tupac.
Poet, prophet, gentleman, real as they come.
I respect that. We're taking it back to Montreal. Loud.
Very interesting artist, very creative, leading a new movement, I think, in the local scene. Salute him, salute Joyride, salute Carlos.
Okay.
Salute Ruff, of course.
Yes,
Ruff is kind of the one who introduced us,
DJ Ray.
Ray, Big Brother, recorded some of my first demos when I was 14, knew me through the whole ride. Very eccentric.
Okay.
Very eccentric.
Yes.
Very eccentric cat, and a real pioneer in Montreal and Quebec hip hop.
Definitely. Jay-Z.
The GOAT. Next to Nas, of course.
Oh, okay.
But hold up.
Okay, I like that. I like that, Bless.
But the reason I say the GOAT is because I would have always been prone to say Nas, right?
Yeah.
But you do have to say that Jay has probably been the most consistent and his catalog is unfuckwithable. I think he has the greatest catalog in hip hop. Think about it.
He has a good catalog. I mean, I'm kind of known as more of a Nas guy.
I was originally, but if you would say my favorite, I might say Nas then Jay. But if you're gonna say the all-around GOAT, you're gonna tally up the data, and I don't mean sales or money, I mean even
I get what you're saying in a hip hop way.
You might have to say Jay.
Okay, if I ask you quick, Pac or Big?
Big. I know you're shocked because I met Pac, and Pac is a close second.
I'm not even shocked. I'm kind of hating right now.
You know what it is? Pac is a close second, but the way I grew up and the kind of student of the game I was with the pen, it was that fucking delivery. That way Biggie was in the pocket, that shit, just gave us all goosebumps. You know what I'm saying? But Pac's music probably aged better than anybody else's music in hip hop.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a strong argument for all
both
of this.
sides. All right, so we're gonna continue the names. There's two last names. Local rapper of today, Enima.
Man, honestly, putting on for the city.
Okay.
Pushing the boundaries. You know what I'm saying? Even though my brand of hip hop is not the same as his, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that what he's doing is very interesting, and his peoples are my peoples, so it's automatic love out the gate. And I definitely support anybody from here that's making moves internationally.
Respect.
So
and
definitely.
One last name before we get out of here, of course, Guru.
That's a great question, man. One of the real ones. One of the real ones, and outside of him being an incredible MC and a legend in music, period.
Yeah.
He was just, he was a special human being, man. And he
doubt.
was a tremendous loss to his fans, a tremendous loss to his family, and a big loss to me as a brother, as a mentor. So I can't say enough great things about the God.
Absolutely.
Don Gurizzi, R.I.P. my brother Guru, Gangstarr forever. You already know what it is.
Gangstarr Foundation, man. Once again, it's a pleasure to have you, bro. Big shout out to Bless for everything he's been doing for the city for many years. Go watch out for that new video. It's called In My Shoes. It's out right now. You know what I mean? This is how we do it. This is On the Spot with your boy J7, ONZMTL, Real City Representation. We out.